All right, we're recording. Hello, and welcome to this summer's edition of American National Government. So, here's some basic information to start you off. My name is Dr. John L. Phillips. I'm an assistant professor here in political science at Austin Peay. My email, you can see it right there. That's the best way to get in touch with me. You can also use D2L email, but just fair warning, that email doesn't go straight to my phone, and so it often takes me longer to answer emails through D2L than it does if you use your regular Austin Peay email. Over the summer, I'm doing office hours by appointment, so if you want to come by and see me and talk to me about the class or anything else, please send me an email. We can schedule a time. It shouldn't be a problem, but there are too few students on campus, quite frankly, to justify regular office hours. My office location, for those of you who don't know, is in the Clement Building on campus, on the main campus, 143E. Okay, let's start by answering a couple questions about the course. One, what is political science? And two, why should we study it? Political science is the study of the process of making decisions, usually by governments, to allocate public resources and to create and enforce rules for the operation of society, or so says Ken Coleman. Note that the definition changes somewhat when we switch to UCSD professor Gary Jacobson, who says politics is a study of the process through which individuals and groups reach an agreement on a course of common or collective action, even as they disagree on the intended goals of that action. Frankly, which definition we pick doesn't matter a whole lot. I think Gary Jacobson might be a little optimistic about the notion that politics involves a process of agreement. Sometimes, of course, it does. It involves certainly a lot of bargaining in some cases, but note that in non-democratic countries, we'll see a lot less bargaining and agreement and a lot more top-down hierarchical politics. Of course, we see also that in democracies, in the bureaucracy, for example, there are hierarchies. Why should we study political science? Well, a few reasons, I think. Political science is important, and you should, everyone, I think, should take a course, at least one course in political science. One, we need to be able to pursue our interests more effectively. Political science helps us know where and how to get things done in our political system when we want changes or when we want remedies. So, for instance, if you want a change to the way your children are being educated, it does very little good to lobby the national government because, of course, most educational policy is handled at a local level. So, similarly, if you care very much about certain kinds of legislation getting passed, particularly economic or budgetary matter, taxes, for example, the president is really not the lawmaker-in-chief. The president is not a legislator. The president can't even propose legislation, not formally anyway. Of course, that is the prerogative of Congress in our system of divided government. And so, if you want legislative changes, it's your congressman you need to lobby, not your president. A second reason you might want to study political science is to be able to participate constructively in public discussion, have some idea of what's possible, what's not possible in our system, to have some idea of what the constraints are on decision-making. And that will help you participate more constructively in public discussion because, of course, there might be policies that you would ideally like to have, but they might be prohibited by the Constitution, or they might be very difficult to enact because, again, usually because of the Constitution one way or another, because it required an amendment, and constitutional amendments are very difficult to pass. We've only ever had 27. The third reason to study political science is more normative. It has to do with being a good citizen, right? Democracies don't work if citizens are ignorant, irrational, unable to rationally reward or punish politicians in an appropriate way. So democracies function or go well when citizens are reasonably well informed and reasonably active and paying attention. If citizens are not active and not paying attention, then of course that increases the odds that politicians or political parties or perhaps interest groups can get away with stuff, can get away with things that they otherwise might not be able to get away with. And so studying political science, understanding political science, helps you become a good citizen. And finally, perhaps personal reason for some of you, don't embarrass yourself, right? There's people who say things about politics, and I'm sure you've run into some of them. Perhaps you've been one such person at some time. There are people who say things that are outlandish, that are outrageous, factually completely incorrect. And sometimes these facts come out of the mouths of our most powerful politicians, who make assertions or claims that simply are not true. And you don't want to be that person amongst your friends. You don't want to be the person to say something that turns out to be completely wrong. It's possible that if you're a powerful politician, it's easier to get away with that sort of thing because people are disposed to believe you. But among your friends, it might be more difficult. And so, once again, it's part of being a responsible citizen. It's part of being someone who can legitimately take pride in their citizenship. Let's talk a little bit about the course now. After all, that's probably of more immediate interest to most of you. As you know, this is a summer course running from the beginning of June to the beginning of July. It's an accelerated class. We have to get through 14 weeks worth of work in 5 weeks. That is going to be rough. D2L is set up so that you have a little bit to do every day of the week. If you go into D2L, you will see that I have something for nearly every day between June 5th and July 7th. Now, for the most part, all of this is my suggested course of study. If you do everything that's assigned for each day, you are giving yourself every chance of doing well in the class. However, in reality, the course is a lot more flexible than this. Really, only the discussion posts are due on the day they're associated with in D2L. Your quizzes, your work in the textbook is really due on Sunday night. It might be, say, indicated on Monday that you should do this chapter of MindTap, but in reality, you have until Sunday to do it. I just think that having a plan, having a schedule set up ahead of time, letting you know whether you're ahead of schedule or behind schedule will be helpful, rather than making a whole bunch of work assigned on Sunday night, which makes it more likely that you start on Sunday and then perhaps you don't have time to finish it, because after all, it's 5 days worth of schoolwork in one day. So there's a framework, a superstructure for the class, which assigns work every day, but in reality, a lot of the deadlines are more flexible than that. In fact, the course is so flexible that if you miss a quiz or you miss a chapter in your textbooks, or in cases like your quizzes where you have several attempts, if you want to retake that quiz, I'm going to reopen everything during the last week of class. So it's a way to catch up. If you get sick, if you get behind, if work takes over and requires overtime from you and you don't get to something, I'm not going to reopen it immediately, but I will reopen it in the last week of class so that you can catch up. So really, you have no excuse to not complete all the work and do it well. Talking really briefly about the textbook. Textbook is called MindTap for American Governments. It's an online textbook. There are various advantages and disadvantages of using an online textbook. I cover some of that in the syllabus. It's also a learning platform in the sense that it has flashcards you can study with, and it has links to all sorts of stuff, and in particular, it has a whole bunch of exercises that are associated with each chapter. These exercises are meant to kind of help control for whether you understood what you just read, right? So you're doing a little bit of reading, and then you look at exercises, and you can immediately tell whether you understood the reading or you didn't. And these exercises are graded, and they count for 20% of your grade. quizzes. So after you do all your work in a textbook and you become familiar with the material, and maybe you've reviewed some slides and you've reviewed the flashcards, you're going to be asked to take an open book multiple choice test in D2L. This test is not designed to be that difficult. I mean, you should take it seriously, but it's designed to simply reinforce the learning that you have done with the textbook. So you have 3 attempts at each quiz. The quiz changes a little bit because it takes a random selection of questions from a larger pool. But you have 3 attempts, and I'm going to count the highest grade towards your final grade. Like I said, if you have attempts left, if you take a couple of attempts, say in week 1, and you're okay with your score, but then on the last week of class, you realize that you need to up your grade for that week, you can go back and take your final attempt. And if it's worse, you won't lose anything, and if it's better, of course, you'll improve your grade. All the quizzes together are worth 30% of your final grade in the course. There are 10 of them. Discussion questions. So the way I look at it, MindTap and D2L quizzes teach you the fundamentals of government, but the discussions are where you get a chance to develop your own thinking about government, to develop a perspective, a critical, analytical perspective on what you're doing. So on days where MindTap work is not assigned, I have assigned materials in D2L for you to look at. These are videos and slides. Sometimes there's slides accompanied by videos where you could do one or the other. Doing both will probably be helpful, but it's often a format like this. Videos are often a format like this where I'm talking over the slides. Okay, so I've assigned all this material for you to look at, and once you've looked at all the material, you have 1 to 3 questions to answer. And these questions are, of course, on the material that was just provided, and they really are more interpretive questions. They're less factual questions, but they're asking you what causes what, and often asking you for opinion or to take a side on an issue, and I will be grading those discussions. Now, in reality, they're not so much discussions. I actually wanted to do a mini tutorial. It doesn't look like there'll be too many more than 10 students in the class, and so as a result, I will be the one responding to you. You are not required to respond to your fellow students, although you're welcome to follow the conversations that I'm having with your classmates, and you're absolutely welcome to chime in if you'd like to, but that's not required. What is required is that you make an initial post, and then that you make a follow-up post answering the questions, the follow-up questions that I have about your initial post, where I'll be pushing you a little bit to develop your view. I'll be, in some ways, a gadfly, in some ways, a devil's advocate, where I will be trying to poke holes in your view or trying to question what you've just said in order for you to come back and further develop the view that you initially laid out. Your initial post is always going to be due the day it's indicated in D2L. So this is the one thing that's not flexible about the course, is the discussion post. You need to post your discussions on the day they are due. And unless you fall sick or have a very, very good excuse, there's no take backsies. There will be no possibility of making up the work at the end of the class. Because once you post, you have to give me time to respond to your post. And when I respond to your post, you will then have until Sunday to formulate a response. So, for example, let's say that you have a discussion due on Wednesday. You do the discussion on Wednesday. I should have it answered by Thursday night. And then you have until Sunday to formulate a response. And overall, your discussions are worth another 30% of your grade. And again, I think there's 10 of those as well. So there's plenty of opportunities to develop. The grading criteria for discussions, and I realize some of it is going to be subjective. And by subjective, I don't mean I'm going to grade you however I feel like it, or I'm going to grade you based on whether I like your responses or not. I'm going to be making judgment calls about how much evidence, about how clear your reasoning is, about your spelling and grammar and all these other important things as well. So check out those grading criteria to make sure that you maximize your grade. Of course, you'll be getting plenty of feedback from me throughout the course. That's the point of the kind of tutorial system, is that you'll get feedback from me. And then there's a final exam. Yes, unfortunately, Austin Peay classes that are under the 2000 level are required typically to have a final exam. Sometimes people fudge it and make it a final paper, but I have to give you some sort of final examination. And so that examination will take place on June 7th. It's going to be a 24-hour take-home. So that means that I will post questions or a series of questions on D2L, and you will then have 24 hours to answer those questions, and then you will submit your answers into the D2L Dropbox, kind of like you're submitting an essay, only in this case you're submitting a test. And that exam will be worth 20% of your grade, and it will be substantially comprehensive. It'll be kind of about the course as a whole, about putting things together. Of course, we're doing things chapter by chapter, but in reality, everything's related, and so I want to get you to start thinking about how these things are related, and that's worth 20% of your grade. All right, that's about all I had to say. What now? Well, it's important for me that you read the syllabus. Too many students do not read the syllabus cover to cover, and yet professors often take a whole bunch of time putting those syllabi together because they go over just about everything you need to know. So what happens if you miss a quiz or if you miss a discussion? What happens, what sorts of things can be excused, what sort of things aren't going to be excused? You know, like I said, the grading criteria for the discussion quizzes, discussion boards are going to be there. You know, a whole bunch of suggested semester schedule will be there. Again, I think it'll be helpful for you to read it cover to cover, and that way there will be no surprises throughout the semester. As you know, every online class is a little bit different. Every professor handles situations that arise a little bit differently, and so I think it'll be useful for you to go and make sure that we are all on the same page about how things are going to, what's going to happen, how things will be graded. Okay, a second thing that you should do now is go make sure that you can log into your textbook. If money's an issue, they give you, I think, a 6 or 7 free day trial before you actually have to pay. So if financial aid is slow in coming or something, you should still be able to go do work. That's not an excuse to not log in. Every semester I have a couple students who have technical issues with MindTap, either because of the browser they're using or because their computer is slow or their internet connection is slow. So go right now and make sure that you can log into MindTap one way or another. And finally, log into the D2L and introduce yourself to the class for a couple bonus points. So this is a bonus discussion. I will respond to it, but it won't be. You won't have to respond to my response in this case. It's really just a get to know you discussion forum for the first day of class. All right, this is me signing off. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch. And otherwise, good luck.